that's commendable. And if you can reach the level that you're talking about, that would be wonderful. I look at the challenges being faced right now by the police and fire department. We're at $7,500, I think is what was mentioned on a $30,000 bill, and they've been out there trying to raise that money for a period of time.
Well, they've also been fighting, post-pandemic.
Yep, absolutely.
And I'm really hoping by next summer that we have everything back to normal and all the fun stuff back. We're going to have to do some creative fundraising for the local. And I've already talked with several people. I've talked with the crematorian, the ice cream place in town. He's willing to help out with an ice cream social. So we've already reached out to some businesses that are kind of, showing some interest in helping us with this project.
But going back to what I said earlier, you understand my perspective when I raise that is to what's the level of interest really going to be? Because, I understand, you and I have talked about this personally.
Right.
How much you have to beg, borrow, and steal to get people to come in the Freight House. And there's so many neat things in that Freight House.
It is, to anybody who has not been through the museum, I can't suggest any strongly, you need to go. You'll learn some stuff about South Lyon and the area that you didn't know. We love the guests that come in. We learn. We get so many people whose grandparent, or we get people from other states that just randomly stop in. Our audience, or our patronage, has increased. I don't know, Linda, what would you say from prior to the pandemic till last year? Yeah, our guests.
We had probably close to 300 last year.
And that was post-pandemic. We are seeing a big increase in the interest. I want to work more with the school system. We only have 2 schools who use the schoolhouse. How many schools do we have? That's a shame that only 2 schools are using that schoolhouse. That's a great learning opportunity. Yes, we've had some struggles, but we're also trying for grants to redo some of our displays, make it a little bit more modern, a little bit more interesting for the younger generation. We have a lot of clutter, which is why we wanted a barn. It is an extension of the museum. And I think that once that domino effect occurs, I think you're going to see a big difference. We're already on some travel groups. He mentioned the quilt, barn quilt. For those who don't know what a barn quilt is, I'm probably going to work with the Cultural Arts Commission on that issue, because we want to obviously make a quilt that's going to represent South Lyon and what South Lyon stands for. And that puts us on a tourist destination. And I think that's good for South Lyon. The barn may not, the way the stalls are inside the barn, using it for an event would be extremely difficult to remove.
Unless the partitions were movable. You pull them out,
if we go
a couple of posts out of the floor, put
the barn,
cast in.
it's made with teak, pine. You can't even find it anymore.
Okay.
It's very solid, non-movable. So having an event would mean having to take down displays, remove that, and that would be several days before and several days after. And considering the amount of barns that are available in the area for rental, I don't really think that would benefit us too much. I think if we could increase our chapel rentals and our freight house rentals, that would be probably the better way to go.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the information.
Thank you.
I'd also like to say that our demographics as a historical society.
Microphone. Could you use the microphone? Thanks.
Our demographics as a historical society, generally, like a lot of historical societies, most of the members are seniors or almost senior age. And recently, we've acquired some new members that are actually in their 20s and 30s. And they are very enthusiastic about this project, just as enthusiastic as the senior members are. So we think that the future of the Historical Society and the Historic Village is very bright, and just having these new members come on board is really making us very happy.
Well, that's encouraging. That's good to hear.
Councilmember Hanson.
Just a couple of questions in regards to the barn project. I was curious, I was looking at the pictures and then I even pulled up Google Street View to see where the barn was from the road. And I was curious what the age of the roof is, if you had a general...
We don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, that question has come up, and we don't know, but we plan to replace the roof with steel shingles. That the steel shingles will not only help keep the barn dry, but it'll help fireproofing it.
Because it just looks like the roof is quite a bit newer than the wood structure, so I wasn't sure on that. And with the, have there been any discussions as far as like the goal for preservation of material, like a certain percentage before you basically say, okay, look, it's just going to cost more to make a reproduction than try to salvage, or?
We haven't really, I mean, we know what the estimate is for the new barn and that. I guess I would say that we haven't gotten into that great a detail yet. As I mentioned earlier, we also want to get at least one more proposal, and we'll have to balance what one contractor says versus the other contractor, because one may be very more optimistic than the other one. So
I figured I'd ask just in case, because it's one of those cost things, obviously preserving, some of the structure and whatnot, but I wasn't sure if that had been discussed as far as, okay, look, we're only able to save 20% of the structure, why don't we just make a reproduction, kind of use this as a guide kind of thing, so. But no, it's pretty exciting, and I'm excited to see where you guys go with it, so.
Councilmember Dill.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out and presenting. I just wanted to suggest something that we have done with a few of our clients. I work for a civil engineering firm, and when we've had a few clients use social media and videos to when they're building a new thing and they really want to get community interest in it. And I would be willing to help you work on this, but it would be really a very interesting thing to do is to have, I even had this client that had like a whole parade as they were bringing things down the road, to just try to get involvement. They have they had a viewing stand where people could come and watch it go up. I just think it would be a neat way to get people involved and interested in what's going on, especially as we're coming to the anniversary of South Lyon. So it's just something I'd be willing to help with. I think it could be a really fun, I'll give you a few case studies. It could be a really fun way to get people excited about what's going on.
That would be great, yes.
And I also have a fundraising idea that I can talk to you about later, but it's when I was growing up, and I will age myself, but during the bicentennial, I was a child.
I wasn't, so.
They had, we did a big fundraiser in the city I lived in, and I know we have to talk to a lot of people about this, but it was about the getting organizations to sponsor fire hydrants. And I know when the lieutenant mentioned how many fire hydrants we had, it was a really cool thing where people could sponsor a fire hydrant, pay some money to be the sponsor of it, almost like our scarecrows, and they could paint it. It was just kind of a cool thing around the 150th anniversary. It would be kind of a cool thing to do. But it's something I could talk to you about later, but just some interesting ideas to get some excitement and involvement around what you're trying to do.
Right. One of the things that we think will help quite a bit with drumming up excitement will be us having a booth at the farmers market one weekend each month. And we also have a display that the Michigan Barn Preservation Network has that travels around the state. We're going to have that display at least one weekend that we have the booth at the farmers market. It's about, I want to say it's probably about 10, 12 feet wide and 7 feet tall. It's made of banners. And it explains the reasons why Michigan needs barn preservation and what kind of community involvement and that can help with the preservation. So we've already been talking with them, and we just don't have the exact weekend yet that it's going to be on display here. So
Great. I'll get a hold of you about some of the other stuff too. Thanks.
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Several questions I wanted to ask. On the proposed cost, you have a range from 140 to 160. When did you receive that estimate?
It was early this year. You're thinking about the rising price of
Yeah.
lumber and all that. That's why there's kind of a range in there. And our goal actually is to raise more than that 160,000 because we're anticipating that possibly inflation may continue to rise and increase the cost. So we also don't know exactly if we may have some hidden problems. And so for that reason, our goal actually is to raise almost $200,000.
Okay, well, that's a different number than what's here.
It's in there, but the 140 to 160 is what the contractor quoted.
Okay, so the contractor quoted, I'm going to go with the high number. The contractor quoted roughly 160 sometime this winter. How long was he willing to hold that 160 number? Until you're ready to build a year from now or 18 months from now? Or did he say it's good for 90 days?
His lead time, it was 1 year, so it would be 1 year.
Did you get that in writing?
No.
Okay. The next thing is he is asking for the contractor. Most contractors are going to ask for money down. He's asking for 25% down. When you give the 25% or whatever they want as a down payment, you're not going to just hand them over the money until you have all your money raised.
Yeah, I would say, well, I don't know that we would have all of it. I think we would have, like Victoria said, we would have the majority of it raised.
I would just be careful handing somebody 25% of $160,000 when you don't have all your funds raised. I mean, that's a little bit, I mean, that's a risk that I don't know if I would take, only because you don't have a guarantor that's coming through the back door, i.e. the city, that's going to pick up the balance. You know, it looks like it's going to be money that's being raised, and so you are highly dependent on individual donors at this point.
Right, and I think that's why our intention right now is to do some major fundraising and not do so much fundraising where we're going to individuals and that, because we want to raise, we know that if we can't raise the main bulk of the funds, then maybe the project is unrealistic, at least at this time. So.
And I could be wrong, but I thought I read somewhere that the property is for sale.
That property is for sale, yes.
Has somebody purchased that property?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, not yet. So at some point, the property is going to be sold. And let's say somebody buys it this summer, because people are migrating out here. Somebody buys it. How much time is this family going to give you to make a decision on whether you're going to remove the barn or whatever?
We've discussed that with Mr. Roper, and right now, any prospective buyers that he's talking to, he is letting them know about the situation with that barn. As you know, there's two barns there. You may not know this. There's two barns there. One's a large barn, and then there's a small one, and the small one's the one that we're interested in. He has told us that he will tell the prospective buyer that we plan to take that small barn down and move it. I don't know, I can't say whether he's giving them any kind of a time frame or not, because he hasn't told us that. So he's just told us that he is going to disclose that to prospective buyers.
So,
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I had forgotten about that, actually, yeah. So Phil Wypert is actually drawing up a letter of intent for the society to take possession of the barn.
even though you don't have the money?
Yes.
Just for the holding of the barn for this village,
Yeah, it doesn't,
excluding it from the sale.
so that the buyer would know that there's already a pre-agreement for the barn.
The letter of intent is,
There's no financial obligation from us.
The letter of intent is being addressed to who? The owner of the property or the prospective purchaser?
Prospective purchase.
Of which you don't have one yet.
He
There
hasn't
isn't.
officially, it's not officially for sale yet.
Yeah, I don't see that. It's not on
Okay. Well, I think you need to be careful with your letter of intent. I'm not going to get into anything else other than that, but you are drafting a letter of intent that you intend to do something. Is this a binding or a non-binding letter of intent? It's real important that you figure that one out, because there's a lot going on here. Other than that, I want to thank you for your commitment to preservation. I come from a family with an agricultural background. I have spoken to Linda about it. And I have a family that has preserved a barn. And I understand it in the state of Wisconsin. These barns are disappearing. And I am a strong, strong advocate for preservation of our heritage, our Midwest heritage. So I want to thank you for your commitment to that value. It's very important. Also, the Cultural Arts Commission does have an individual by the name of Pat Peruski, who manages the quilt show that the Cultural Arts Commission has once a year. She would probably be the contact. I'll get a hold of you, and I'll run it past my contact in the Cultural Arts Commission tonight, and I think you'd be surprised. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, maybe what you might want to do on that quilt is run a contest for a design and let the Cultural Arts Commission help you out on that. But it's your call. But
That's not
that could be a fun project, So thank you for your commitment.
Well, I think this has been a very good start of the process of gathering facts between the two groups. Councilmember Kibble, if you have anything else to add, go ahead.
Yeah, just a little one. First off, the 120K, if you're able to get that, do you plan on using that as match money for a grant?
Once we have some private donations in and what monies the society has currently, then at that time we'll be able to apply for matching grants.
Okay. And secondly, just a little point of interest for it. In the event that this all coalesces and comes to fruition, you guys should really consider getting a fixed camera out there that can watch the progress of the thing as it's going, put it on a website.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm all for it, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that, like, just watching the water tank go up was exciting, so.
All right. Well, thank you, Bob. And thank you to everyone at the Historical Society for your time tonight. And I'm sure we'll be hearing from each other down the road. So thank you. With that, we're going to move on to unfinished business this evening. Number 1, unsolicited written materials.
This item was discussed at a prior city council meeting regarding delivery of unsolicited materials to addresses within the city. We've created a draft ordinance for review. The draft ordinance is prepared and is based upon comments that were made at that council meeting and meetings that I have had with the city attorney regarding this material. Tonight, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding this first draft of the ordinance.
Councilmember Dill, go ahead.
Thank you. I don't know if maybe I'm reading it wrong, but it seems to me like we're still, the way this reads, it's basically saying they can do the thing that the original complaint was about. On the sidewalk, lawn, or driveway, which was actually the problem, was that they were getting delivered and thrown onto lawns and things like that.
This
So
one
I-
differs a little bit in that we have designated that it has to be on the property. So that would be from the sidewalk, either on the grass or on the driveway or on the porch. Nothing's allowed to be on the sidewalk or city-owned property or the grass between the curb and the sidewalk or on the driveway portion between the sidewalk and the thing or along the street. We were trying to get up so it had to actually be on physical property. So that is the one difference.
Right. I understand that. I just don't think it's worth the ordinance if it's going to be that, because I think it's not going to give the relief to people that they're looking for. I guess I was more hoping for, that we were going to have some kind of a way to indicate that people had to have something that allowed them to opt out of getting these items somehow, just like political information, it says, it's required, you have to put an address and contact information on. I guess that's what I was really hoping for, that there'd be some way that we could say, the ordinance is, if you're going to throw this stuff on our lawn, you have to tell us who you are so we can get off of this list. So is the way this is written, I just feel like it just feels to me not really worth it to go through all this because it doesn't really give the relief that I think people are looking for.
Councilmember Kittle?
I agree. I think it's way too squishy.
Nope, sorry. Go ahead, Councilmember Kittle.
I just think it's way too squishy a language. Or, they can just say, well, no, that's not ours, or, it was, we threw it in the right place, somebody kicked it on the sidewalk.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Because when we talked about this originally, we talked about not requiring that it be attached to the door, but we did talk about it being on a porch. We didn't say on their lawn. We didn't say on their driveway. We said on their porch. Somebody has to make a concerted effort to deliver it to a specific spot or provide a receptacle for it to be delivered into. Kind of like if it's going to be delivered by the free press driver, they can provide newspaper boxes for that. So if we need to tighten it up a little bit, I'd like to see if the attorney could take another run at it, or she can tell us why we didn't do that and what the problem is with doing that.
I'm going to go to Councilmember Hanson first, and I'm going to come to the city attorney. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, Councilman Dilg actually brought up exactly what I had read about, and I mean, is it possible to even just axe item 3, or is that being too non-surgical?
City Attorney Amame, go ahead.
Actually, 3 is what was added from the last meeting. After discussions with Paul, we took from that meeting that you wanted to allow it to be on the property. So that was added after the last meeting. Certainly can come out if that's not what you wanted.
Councilmember Kurtz, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. I've had an opportunity to review the ordinance, and I don't believe that my position has changed from the last meeting. And I, first of all, want to thank the council for being very gracious with allowing me to sort of express a different opinion than theirs. And mine is a little bit based in ideology, which is different from theirs. But they've been very gracious in tolerating a different point of view. And that point of view is that this particular ordinance to me is regulating conduct of an individual that wants to distribute literature on private property. And I have leanings that do not like government intervention in my life. And this is government intervention, I believe, at its best. I think government's been telling us a lot lately. When to wear a mask, when not to wear a mask, whether you can sing in church, whether you can't sing in church, whether you need 1 vax, 2 vax, you need to be boosted or whatever. Send your kids to school or don't send them to school. And now we have government telling us that if you want to distribute literature to a private home, you need to put it on a porch because government's going to think for you. You need to securely attach it to a front door because you're not capable of thinking, so we're going to think for you and tell you where you need to put this literature. Or you can put it in a mail slot, or you can put it in a mail distribution box. So government is telling you where you have to put this literature that you are out distributing on private property. Now, if they just wanted to do this and say, hey, if you're going to be going around the city to the city building or going here or going there, that's fine if it's public. But this is now intervening on private property, and that's one of the issues that I have with this particular ordinance. Additionally, as I spoke with individuals in the community and talked about this, they hadn't seen the problem. So I am not quite sure where the problem is with this literature being tossed around, but Didn't appear to be a problem in Trotter's Point. Didn't appear to be a problem in Hunter's Creek. Didn't appear to be a problem in Oak Creek or Hidden Creek. So I'm not quite sure where this problem is, because I've spoken to individuals in all those subdivisions, and, their reaction was, "You gotta be kidding." No, I'm not. So I think this may be an isolated issue. It's occurring in an isolated area, but yet we are now going to potentially charge 12,000 residents in the city with a civil violation if they inappropriately put a piece of literature in the wrong place on private property, when it appears that the issue is concentrated maybe to a very isolated area. I also have a problem with the ordinance creating a presumption that the materials were placed at the premises by an owner, and when you continue that particular language, it says, "or idea, which is being advertised, promoted, endorsed." Sounds like First Amendment to me. What are you doing? What are you doing? Charging people with a civil infraction because they had an idea that was being advertised, an idea that was being promoted, an idea that was being endorsed or conveyed in materials. What are you doing? If this doesn't reek of censorship, I don't know what does. To me, this is censorship. You can't sit here and tell me this is a litter ordinance. This has got nothing to do with litter. This has to do with your idea. That's what this has to do, and that's censorship to me. Next, I noticed that there is an exemption. And the exemption in the ordinance says, the provisions of this section do not apply to the United States Postal Service. Well, what you didn't exempt out was unsolicited written materials that were protected by both the state and federal constitutions with respect to the First Amendment. The First Amendment, for some reason, isn't even discussed in this ordinance. You're not even exempting political material, advertising material, religious material that may come to a person's door that is clearly protected under the First Amendment. What you are doing is you are attacking those ideas coming from those venues and saying, you better put your literature, if you're going to campaign for the governor, if you're going to campaign for the attorney general, whoever you're campaigning for, you better put that literature on the porch. You better put that literature securely attached to the front door, because this ordinance does not make a distinction between literature or unsolicited material protected by the First Amendment. Does not do it at all. And to me, that's a dangerous road to go down, and I will say it again, this is about censorship. I cannot support this under any circumstances. And thank you, Council, for your professionalism.
City Attorney, did you have anything on that? Okay.
I'd just ask,
I'm trying to make sure that the City Attorney didn't have anything, and then Councilmember Kibble, you've spoken since Councilmember Dill has, so I'm going to go to Councilmember Dill, and then I'll come to you next.
that's fine.
Yep.
I didn't see she.
No, that's all right.
raised her hand.
First, I appreciate your viewpoint. I do not appreciate words being put in my mouth as far as what my ideology is or isn't. And I do strongly support the First Amendment, and I do also agree with a lot of your points. What my point is, and I also talk to a lot of people. I have seen in social media, I have seen in people I've talked to, that there are a lot of people who have issues with this particular newspaper that gets thrown around. However, I don't think what I started out with is I don't think this addresses it. My personal opinion is, if we were going to do something like this, the way this is, if this was brought up, I would vote no. I think that we just need to say, just like political information, is that you have to have contact information to give people relief, to be able to say, please don't send me this anymore. That is all I think is necessary, and I just want it on the record that it is not against everyone on council's ideology that we